My cheating husband tried to force me to buy a house for his parents, so I served him divorce papers instead.
People remain the same. They do not change under the best or worst of circumstances. On the contrary, extreme cases bring out the true nature of people that they've hidden for a while. And if I've known for the fact a long time ago, I probably would have evaded the unnecessary pain that I suffered. I come from a family of 5. My parents gave birth to 2 girls and a boy. Our home was like a haven. My parents' union was like the model marriage, one which most folks would love to have. My parents had known each other when they were in their teenage years, and they've bonded so well while growing up that it was no surprise to anybody when they actually tied the knot. That's a good thing, because you get to know your partner really well, as people can hide their true identity for a long time. I desired that kind of true love story, but I believe that was my mistake. I so wanted a love story like my parents that I became so stupid and naive, to the point that I let myself be treated like trash. I met Jackson in my high school years. He was the first guy and picked interest in me, so I was thrilled by his attention. Jackson's parents were not rich, but they had nothing to do with how he treated me, or how I related with him. As it's normal for guys who's into a girl, there was really nothing that I was not willing to do for him. We kept our thing a secret from our parents, and it was fun. Our brief love story was soon threatened when we graduated from high school. I was preparing for college while Jackson broke the news to me that although he would have loved to further his education, he couldn't, because the financial constraints his family was going through. I felt really sad. I had no money anywhere, and there was really no place to steal from, otherwise I would have done it. So I was left with only one option of telling my parents about him. My parents were not angry that I kept the whole thing a secret, though they encouraged me to be more open with issues like this. They believed that anyone could find love at a young age as they had done. They, however, warned me to avoid any form of sexual relations with Jackson, till I was sure I was ready for it, which should be after my college, as they did not want me to get pregnant while in school. I brought Jackson to meet my parents, who arranged a meeting to meet with his people. My parents were going to sponsor him in college. His parents were glad and grateful that my mom and dad were footing their son's college bills, but I was more grateful to my parents for not allowing my brief love story to come to an end so soon, because there was every possibility that Jackson could move on to be another girl, while I went away to college and he stayed back. If only I could predict the future, I would have never crossed paths with him. Jackson was from an abusive home. Him and his siblings were used to seeing their father beat up their mother, and the whole idea that women are meant to be treated like trash rubbed off on the boys. Jackson, well, he was not an exception. During our college days, I did my best to treat my man right. There was nothing I did not do besides sex. My parents rented him a house of his own, and equally sent him a monthly allowance that was enough to take care of his needs. This didn't stop me, though, from giving him more money, which my parents gave him, and it sometimes made me demand for more money from my parents. I thought Jackson loved and cherished our relationship the way I did, but I was soon shocked to my bones when I paid him a surprise visit one day and found him sleeping with my best friend Janet. I was wounded and just my heart shattered. I ran back to my home, and neither Jackson nor my best friend contacted me for days. I could not report the issues to my parents, as I knew what their verdict would be. They were likely going to ask me to break off ties with Jackson, but I loved him too much to let him go, so I left my parents out of the loop. After days of expecting my boyfriend to come running back to me in tears, I decided to go visit him at his place. How stupid I was. Jackson began playing the victim card. He claimed that I was to blame for him sleeping with my best friend. He said that if I had given him the numerous demands that he had made to sleep with me, then he would not have looked elsewhere. But because I claimed I wasn't ready yet, he had to satisfy himself some other way. Guys, I fell for his trick. I pleaded with him not to break up with me before my best friend. I then promised to do my best to please him, even if it meant going against what I wanted. Jackson and we made up a week later, and he took my virginity. I gave him my innocence because I felt it was the only way to keep him by my side. I never knew that sex was not enough to keep a partner who did not want to stay. As was well for a while, until Jackson reverted back to his lifestyle. He began misbehaving again, and this time, he did it like he was right. I was devastated, frustrated, and hurt that I just did not know what to do. We were in our 3rd year in school when, and rather than pay for his rent with the money which my parents had given to him, he would rather choose to move in with me. I was a student just as he was, but he said he was going to turn me into a housewife. I cooked for him with my money, did his laundry, gave him money and every demand he needed, but it amounted to nothing. Absolutely nothing. He still cheated on me like he just didn't care. I confronted him one certain day when I saw the text message that he had exchanged with a lady, and we had another heated argument. But this time, he hit me. He hit me hard. It was the first time that Jackson was to lay his hands on me. I left the apartment immediately and headed straight to the family house. I got home and broke down crying while my parents and everyone wondered what was going on. I couldn't talk. I didn't want to. I knew the implications of what would happen if my parents learned that Jackson just hit me. I just spent hours crying. Jackson showed up at her home a few hours later and began apologizing with his tears. It was the first time I've ever seen him cry in all the years we've been together. It was clear to everyone present that Jackson was somehow related to me crying earlier on, but I didn't want to get them involved. Looking back now, I believe that the only reason Jackson would have come begging was because it dawned on him that if my parents heard he had lifted his hands on me, he could kiss his little education goodbye. All the same, I accepted his apology and we both returned back to school to finish the studies. Jackson somehow straightened up till we graduated. He seemed faithful and loyal. He began to make out time for me and help around the apartment. The way he acted made me feel like he was falling in love with me afresh. A year later, and we both graduate. My parents threw a little surprise party for me, and I was further surprised when during the party, Jackson got on his knees and proposed to me. I cried out loud enough that the heavens could hear above, yes, yes, yes. It was really sweet. I felt special, but don't be deceived. I would not envy anyone who was in my position. Jackson was a con artist who just wanted to have it easy in life under the pretext of love. My parents had promised to sponsor his college education, and they've done just that. But he wasn't ready to face life on his own. Oh no. He still saw me as a means to an end. My parents' wealth and connections, and that's why he proposed to me. He knew that once he got into the family as a son-in-law, my parents were going to do all in their power to ensure that he never lacked anything anymore. Jackson and I got married 6 months after we got engaged. My father gave us a house, a car, and he even helped me secure a job with an IT firm as their analyst. Jackson rejected the proposal from my parents to help him secure a job. He claimed that he had something he was working on, a job which he was expecting that never came. The truth of the matter was that Jackson had bribed his way through school. He could not defend his certificate after they're in the corporate world, and it would only take an employer just a few seconds before he or she deducted that Jackson had nothing upstairs. So while I worked and brought money home, he just stayed back, chilled. I didn't complain though, as our marriage was just starting. Getting married to me equally meant that Jackson's parents and siblings were helped by my family as much as we could. As time went on, I observed a certain pattern in Jackson's family. Their men mostly never worked. The women were the ones bringing things to the table, while the men just sat back feeling entitled to the woman's sweat, and sometimes abused her. Jackson's father was jobless just as Jackson was. And it was not for want of jobs. No, it was because they just didn't want to. Thankfully, though, Jackson had not abused me physically or emotionally ever since that first time. I became pregnant a year after we got married, and 6 months into the pregnancy, our lives were affected. It was during this time that my husband Jackson resumed his cheating lifestyle. I was easily exhausted, and I could not meet up with certain things, like making out the time to cook for him, even though he wasn't working, and I had little desire in sex due to my exhaustion. Not to mention the fact that his sex drive was insanely high. Up until then, I'd refuse getting a maid even though everyone suggested it. I could not fully trust Jackson around women yet because of his history with them. Well, things soon got to the point where I could no longer do without a maid. And that's how Kate came into the picture. I almost suffered a miscarriage on the 8th month of my pregnancy, and I gave birth prematurely to twin boys. While I was at the hospital recovering, my maid Kate and my husband were busy, sleeping around. I spent 6 weeks at the hospital during that time. Jackson only visited I and the son 3 times. He sent the maid most of the time because he, quote, had business to attend to. My husband, who had been jobless since over a year we got married, suddenly had some business to attend to. It was the business of sleeping around. I returned home with my kids after I regained my strength, and I was grateful that we had employed a maid, as she basically helped with everything. I observed that weeks after my body has recovered from the tear which came from childbirth, my husband still had not approached me for sex. And each time I made the move, he turned me down under the pretext that I needed to fully recover. His attitude got me suspicious because my husband was not one to refuse sex, and the fact that we had not been intimate for months as a result of the pregnancy and childbirth meant that he was getting satisfaction somewhere. I began monitoring his every move closely, and it was not long when I saw the truth with my own eyes. I caught him pants down with our maid Kate. I sent the maid packing, and I knew that it was pointless talking to Jackson, as he was not going to listen, so I paid his parents a visit to lay my complaints. They welcomed and listened to me and promised to call their son to order, but they never did. I would later discover that they were the ones pushing him all along, to meander his way into my family and milk us dry. Jackson and I began growing distant over the next couple of years. He had no time for his kids, much less his wife. We barely had sex. And when we did, I made sure I took my birth control pills because I was not ready to bring any more children to this world, only to be left to train them on my own. We'd been married for 5 years, and now, when his parents sent word that they needed assistance in paying their rent, which had expired, the money was going to come from me, of course, as my husband was still at home, sitting down, doing nothing. Now, I was not really happy with my in-laws because they had failed to call their son to order, despite my pleadings. But it did not stop me from assisting them. I made a pledge to give them the money by the month's end when I had received my salary. But Jackson suddenly began suggesting that we just buy them a house, rather than paying rent every year. Now, I'm not opposed to them owning a house of theirs if they had the money. They were free to get themselves a house, but I wasn't willing to just buy them one. Besides, they'd grown up children who were older than me, and could make and work and make the house talk a reality. I told Jackson my stance on his suggestion about getting a house for his parents, and he claimed that I was being disrespectful. If that was his definition of disrespect, then I did not care. I clearly told him that the rent which I had been paying for his parents in the previous years was a privilege, not a right. It was at this point he hit me for the second time in my life. I did not keep still this time around. I'd overlooked his disgusting entitlement mentality for long, and I was not going to have any more of it. I gathered just enough strength and courage to break his head with a glass tumbler within my reach. And while he was shouting out in pain, I ran out of the house, leaving my kids behind. I was definitely going to come back for them, but I needed to secure my life first. I ran to my parents' house and disclosed what happened and all that I've been enduring for all these years. My father quickly contacted his attorney, and a petition for divorce was immediately filed. I was granted custody of our kids because they chose me over their dad, and the properties which we owed was given to me. My husband left with virtually nothing, and it hurt me because he deserved far worse than that. I'm certain, though, that his laziness and entitlement mentality will definitely land him problems in the near future. He may have gotten scot-free of all things he did to me, but I believe in karma. What you sow is what you reap. If I've made a mistake which had cost me years of happiness, I thought right from my college days when I caught him cheating that he was going to change. I was stupid enough to think compromising my stand would make him faithful, and I even refused telling my parents about what I was going through because I desperately wanted someone who didn't want me. If I had severed ties with him when I saw the signs, then things would have turned out differently. Though I did not get that perfect love story like my parents. I'm content with being a single mom of my 2 handsome boys.
Honestly, the best part of the entire story was the end, when OP decided to go on her own, cut contact from all these toxic people, her in-laws, her ex-husband. It was just ridiculous the way he was treating her, cheating on her while she was pregnant, not working, not providing any type of money or any type of stability, and cheating numerous times. Guys, tell me what you would have done if you were in OP's position. Please drop down your comments down below in the comment section, and we'll turn our attention to the final story of the video. Am I the a-hole for telling my late dad's in-laws that their granddaughter is not my responsibility? I'm 19 male, and my younger sister Kayla is 15 that lives with me. Our dad and his wife died 3 months ago. Mine and Kayla's mom died when we were younger. Dad and his wife had been married for 4 years. His wife had a daughter, Lacey, who's now 5. When CPS became involved, because, well, we both were left orphans, I stepped up to take my sister. I was working full-time since I skipped college, and I just about had what I needed to take care of my sister. They asked me about Lacey, and I told them I just wanted to take my sister. Lacey was placed with her grandparents, my dad's in-laws. They became aware of the fact Kayla came to live with me, and that I've been offered the chance to take their granddaughter and refused. Once they've learned this, though, they asked me why, and then pestered me about it for weeks. Finally, they told me they were older and she could use much family as possible, that she misses Kayla. She wouldn't really remember me, and I asked Kayla if she wanted to see her, and she said not really. So I told them we're not interested in staying with their granddaughter's life. They told me she's our little sister, that my dad would have wanted us to stick together. I told them I didn't care what my dad wanted. They said not to punish a child for the sins of my parent. So I blocked them and continued on with things until they sought me on social media via one of the older grandkids and told me that I should be ashamed of myself and their granddaughter deserves to be with her siblings and be raised by me since I'm young, fit, and healthy and could run after her like they can't and will be around a lot longer than them. I replied once that their granddaughter is not my responsibility and that I wanted them to leave me and my sister alone, because we have no reason to be in touch ever again. That wasn't the end, though. They called me selfish and cruel a few times via another account, so I had to set my account to private to stop them. I need to know from you guys, am I the a-hole for this situation? Okay, so here's a couple comments. Wait. You're 19 and looking after your 15-year-old sister, and they want you to take care of their 5-year-old granddaughter too? Not the a-hole. They need to figure out how to provide care for their granddaughter. Then someone replies to that and says, hey, This should be top comment. OP's only 19 years old himself, to all those feeling bad for a 5-year-old. Not the a-hole, you're already doing a great and kind job taking in your sister. Guys, I couldn't agree more. It's a lot of responsibility for a 19-year-old to have to do. Tell me your opinions though. Do you think she should have taken in the 5-year-old sister as well? Please drop your comments down below, guys. That's all the content for today. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next one.